Hello there and welcome to this Decks of the Season video. In this video I'm going to go through the 2 GDI decks for our second season for September, and then I'm going to do a separate video afterwards with the nod decks so you can watch whichever ones you're more interested in first. So we have 2 decks for each faction again this season, and based on the nominations that were put through and the decks that got voted on, it appears that we have one deck centered around Grenadiers and one that is not a Grenadier deck. It seems like, based on just quickly looking at the main nominations that got chosen this season, we've got a few of the decks that people more generally are quite interested in since the patch changes, and there's a few decks out of the 4 that you might recognise, and a few that are kind of ones that people have just built based off of other similar decks we may have used before, where we've now put new units in that would have been buffed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through the decks that we're going to play, and then I'll play a couple of quick games with them. Now luckily I'm still in Diamond, which means my unit levels shouldn't matter too much, but what I'm going to do, because I kind of want to stay in Diamond to carry on playing around with these decks, is I will actually surrender my matches if I remember to do so. So the first GDI deck is a Jackson Grenadier deck. So essentially how it starts is these 4 units here, which is generally how you build a Razorback deck. The point here really is that you have your core essential units that you kind of have to play as GDI. You want a 10 cost scout unit, so you're either playing War Dogs or you're playing Riflemen generally in a standard deck, and then you have Pitbull for dealing with light vehicles and light air, and you have Razorback for dealing with infantry. And then missile troops are pretty common in most decks, and in this deck they even feature a little bit more heavily because of the classic combination that you do between missiles and Razorback that I've talked about in the past, and you will have seen a lot of players playing. This is a combined arms setup, which means you have multiple units put together where basically they're more efficient than they would be if they're fighting on their own. Some people get a little bit confused with this and they call these types of decks aggro decks, and they're technically not. An aggro deck wants to be throwing out individual strong units to take over pads and be all over the map as fast as possible to fire the missile. This kind of deck wants to generally, starting from this base, fight in one place and control the map that way as much as possible. And the strategies play slightly differently on different maps. Now, how we finish the Grenadier deck for this deck of the season is you look at this and you say, okay, one of the main things that I might not be able to deal with here is if my opponent plays a lot of tanks. So you pick an anti-tank unit, and in this case the person that's built this deck
love a good explosion.
Use Grenadiers. I've just noticed mine are level 7, so I might have to quickly look to see if I've got the credits to level those up. And really, you can kind of beat a lot of different things just with these 5 cards. If you're worried about air, you have only got your missiles and your pitbull to deal with that, so you can put in another anti-air unit, and the person that created this deck just decided that they wanted a hammerhead, which is fine. Obviously that's our strongest anti-air choice. So let's give this one a go. I'm going to try and talk through sort of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it with this deck, but essentially it's the experience that I've had with similar decks with this, where I've played Razorback in the past, is where you just want to set up a unit combination of Razorback to take out the enemy's infantry, and then you just set up another unit that deals with whatever your opponent tries to kill with the Razorback with. In our case, we might start with Missile Razorback, but if we notice our opponent isn't using any air units, we can also use Grenadier. Or if they send out strong tanks, we can use Grenadiers to counter that as well. So let's see how we go.
Establishing battlefield control.
Now, because our Grenadiers, even though they're quite expensive, because they're in the barracks, we will have access to them quite early on because we'll be opening with a rifles unit. So if our opponent goes straight into War Factory, we have a really easy sort of counter for that isn't going to cost us a building cost to switch.
Harvester ready.
Now, one of the keys is going to be to work out whether I need to be the person charging the missile or not. Now, normally the answer in Diamond or Masters is yes, you want to be charging because everybody plays tech, but we'll see how it goes game by game. Now, because he has flamers, I want to try and stall a little bit just so I can save up enough money for Razorback. Now I'm going to build a 3rd rifle just in case he does go for a 2nd flamer though. Note he's gone for a 2nd harvester. Okay, so we do actually kind of want to push this in a little bit.
Building online.
Alright, let's get our Razorback going.
Unit lost.
You can also use the Jackson boost to take out infantry really, really quickly as well. And then I'm just going to build a missile squad in response to the fact that he's going to send out some air units in a moment. And hopefully this will be able to answer whatever he does. It is a Phantom, so what you want to try and do is hide your Razorback behind your missiles as much as possible.
Unit lost.
Okay, and there we go. Now I'm going to use a Pitbull so that I have an easier way of chasing down his Phantom, so that we can try and get a Razorback back online for all of these Flamer squads.
Unit lost. Unit lost. Unit ready. Unit ready.
Now we haven't seen anything for the Grenadiers to fight yet, so we haven't needed them. Okay, and so it's a Basilisk. We have Hammerhead for that as well.
Unit ready. Unit ready. Unit lost.
I'm going to boost the Hammerhead so we can take the Phantom out. And then we should be able to take this Basilisk down, get on the pads, and there we go. This Hammerhead just needs to survive.
Nuclear weapon launched.
Didn't need Grenadiers. We could have used them to rush the Harvester, but it wasn't really necessary. He didn't build any tanks, so we'll play another game and see if we fight someone that's using tanks. And I forgot to surrender, so I need to be careful with that. There we go, perfect. Okay, let's give this one another go.
Establishing battlefield control. Three, 2, 1.
This is a really, really good map for Razorback setups as well, because it can fly around the middle central tile while having units in front of it to protect it. Okay, I'm going to block the Harvester and then send another unit onto the pad. Really heavily want to punish people for building 2 Harvesters blind at the beginning of the game. Right, it's built War Factory, so I'm going to build another missile squad. This also is a good chance for us to use Grenadiers, so I'm going to try and save the rifles in case we need them later. These Grenadiers should make really short work of these buggies. And then we can also use them to harass the Harvester. Now I'm going to block that out if I can. No, I didn't quite make that. Let's keep this missile charging, and then let's attack this Harvester.
Building online. Unit enhanced. Unit lost.
He's really spamming these buggies, which is going to give me lots of good value from these Grenadiers. Let's get a fresh squad, because we only have 2. Let's send them up here. Okay. Kind of want that single Grenadier to die, but we'll leave him on the Harvester for now.
Unit enhanced.
Okay.
Unit ready.
Not much gain from our opponent there. He was too busy trying to protect his Harvesters, and buggies weren't good enough.
Missile launched. Enemy base destroyed.
Didn't quite surrender in time. Never mind. Okay. So, we now need to move on to the second deck. So the other one that we are working on is the sniper deck this time. So, I've played around with this one a little bit actually in some customs because I quite liked the way it played. So when you're building a sniper deck, you are using those as your kind of strong anti-infantry. You then have missiles in your barracks as well, because that's a cheap way of dealing with vehicles and air units, and you have Jackson because boost when you've got medium cost units is really good. You can have rifles in this deck, but usually when people play sniper decks, they open with war dogs. And because you're playing GDI, you stick a pit bull in the deck. Now, building the rest of the deck from here is kind of, again, you can sort of put whatever you want in there as long as you're able to kill tanks. And the one for this season runs with Predator tank. And the idea here is kind of a combined arms again, where because the snipers have 2 range, you want them stationed behind another unit that can protect them. So they protect the unit in front from any infantry that's coming in, and the thing that's in front protects the snipers from any anti-infantry getting to them. So you can have like snipers with missile squads set up in front of them, and then when your opponent builds anti-infantry, you swap the missiles in front for like a pit bull or war dogs or even a predator tank. The top players that play this, including I think Alicia was playing this quite a lot, I don't know if she still is, because she plays tanks really, really well. It tends to be like a real ground tank war with then snipers around to stop you from using missile or laser squads to try and kill your tanks. You only have pitbull and missiles for anti-air at this point, so in your final slot it's generally a good idea to have an anti-air unit. So Talon is an anti-air unit, or Hammerhead. The Alicia version of the deck plays Hammerhead in this slot.
Hammerhead circling.
One of the considerations really with this is snipers are expensive, predators are quite expensive, so having a couple of predators on the battlefield and snipers can cost you quite a lot of money, especially when one of those units dies to try and replace it. So having Hammerhead as your only like strong anti-air or your dedicated anti-air unit at the end can be quite expensive, and the reason why it works for the top players is they get a lot of value out of playing the rest of the units really well, so they don't have to replace them very often. If you're finding that tricky and your opponent's like building Mohawks or Orcas and taking out your tanks and this deck's falling apart because you're not managing to get enough value to get a Hammerhead online, then you can swap this for a Talon. But our version for decks of the season has the Hammerhead in this final slot. So let's see how this goes.
Establishing battlefield control.
Now our 10 cost unit is in our war factory, so we will be opening with war dogs first. Let's see what we're doing.
Harvester ready.
We immediately get a chance to block our opponent's first harvester out. It's really sad for him. Oh, and he immediately surrenders. Okay.
Mission accomplished.
Sad times. I would have given you the surrender there, mate. So we're going to play 2 games with this. We'll ignore that one where the guy's just immediately surrendered. Obviously that's not showing what the deck's doing.
Establishing battlefield control.
It's the same guy again. I'm going to immediately surrender to him so that we don't have the same issue, or that I don't accidentally climb into Masters 3.
3, 2, 1. New objective available. Our base has been destroyed.
And that gives him his medals back as well. Right, let's wait a few seconds, so hopefully we don't get matched up against him again.
Establishing battlefield control.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. New objective received.
This is also a pretty good map for our deck as well. Snipers are really good here where the maps are close, the pads are close together.
Harvester ready.
So that's a good sign first of all. Okay, and he opens War Factory as well. And it looks like that means he wants to stall the missile, which I'm not too sure about at this point. Now, I'm actually going to stall out because he's built his pitbull first. I'm going to make sure the missile stalls a little bit first and actually just save up for Predator tank instead, because then he can't beat that with these 2 units.
Ready to run and gun. Predator taking him. Predator awaiting prey. Will tank taking him down.
Okay, and then he's followed up with more dogs, so I'll build another pitbull.
We'll rip through him. Ready to light them up. Blast them.
Okay, the enemy has snipers, so it is actually usually a good idea to go into... it has missiles, so it's a good idea to go into snipers fairly soon.
Building online.
So let's get that set up. He doesn't have any anti-infantry, so our snipers should be safe.
Unit lost. Warhead launched.
And then I'm just going to build a dogs unit to put in front of the snipers, just in case he builds some anti-infantry there, and then we block. Not bothered about getting my harvester.
Unit lost.
Harvester ready to collect.
We wasted so much time and the whole missile on that.
Lighten them up.
Unit
Let's
ready.
replace our pit bulls, take out these dogs.
Alright, let's do this. Predator. Armor will rip through 'em. People here. Alright, I'm a predator. Gonna hit 'em hard. Pitbull in his upstream line. Blast them. Put it. Tank will rip.
Okay, let's boost our predator over here and go for his harvester as well.
Blast them. Pitbull in his upstream.
Okay, it already has an mammoth tank. Fantastic. Right, I'm going to make sure I've got my airfield ready to have an air unit to take over a pad if needed.
Unit ready.
People here. What up? Predator.
Unit lost.
Can't you send it there in our moving to position?
Predator.
Okay, and let's hope these tanks can survive. I'm going to send out an air unit that he can't kill quickly. We might be in trouble here.
Unit lost. Unit ready. Unit lost.
Okay,
Launched.
maybe that harvester kill did matter for
Major
him.
structural damage received.
Right, let's see if we can distract the mammoth with dogs. Kill it with predators.
Unit ready.
Will rip. Blast them. Fight. Pick them up. Lighten them up. Predator. Gonna hit easy pick.
Unit lost.
And then some missile troops to help us against the sandstorm.
Unit lost.
Tank gonna hit him.
Warning. Enemy ion cannon activated. Unit lost. Unit ready.
People ready. Moving up.
Ready for any
People here. What up?
Okay, let's see if we can stop this
Unit
guy.
ready.
With his expensive units.
Burning rubber. People ready to fight. Pitbull in it. All right. Last pedal. Pitbull in it. Moving up. Pitbull here. Fight.
Unit ready.
All right. Let's do you the juice. Hold it.
Hey, Pitbull, run! Don't get shot by the mammoth.
Unit
That's
lost.
unfortunate.
Unit lost. Nuclear
And we
missile
just sneak out
launched.
the missile.
Unit lost.
That was really close. Our opponent easily could have won
Objective
that.
complete.
Unfortunate for him. Okay, and let's have another go. See if we get a match where the snipers kind of matter a little bit more.
Establishing battlefield control. Three, two,
This
one.
map's not as
New
good for
objective
snipers,
available.
but let's see what our opponent's playing. Maybe they'll still be really helpful.
Harvester
Also a good
ready.
point to remember on this map, always send your harvester to not the point where it always starts from. It's too close to the enemy's middle pad here when your harvester goes to the patch where it defaults
Unit
to.
ready.
Whereas if you send it back, it's much more difficult to harass it. Okay, not bothered about a rhino opening, but I will build
Unit
a
ready.
visual just to send in. Unfortunately, our opponent doesn't have very good level units here, so it might be the case that he loses just because of that, unfortunately. Now that's his second
Building online.
missile squad, so let's get some
Unit
snipers
ready.
in position.
Unit lost. Nuclear weapon launched.
Pedal to the metal. Pedal to
Unit ready.
you the juice. Blast them. Fight.
See, the key here is to play keep away, to stop your opponent getting their anti-infantry to your snipers here, so you get loads of value
Unit
out of them.
lost.
Let's do this. Pedal to the metal. Pitbull in
And
the
let's go into
ready.
predator tank.
Thank you. People here with a green light. All right, let's do this. Ready for action. Predator.
Unit lost.
So again, I can put the predator in front of my snipers just in case a rhino comes along. I'm going to keep this around while the snipers kill the missiles. And it's a titan. That's probably not going to matter, unfortunately.
Unit ready.
So the game is already over.
Unit enhanced.
Ready for action.
Missile launched.
And there we go. Our opponent was unfortunately too slow, and I forgot to surrender again.
Enemy base destroyed. Bounty complete.
And that's it. I'm going to end this video here, and then I'm going to swap over and record a separate video for the decks of the season for Nod. Good luck. I hope you enjoy playing around with those decks this season, team, and I look forward to seeing all your amazing results with them.